officially call you a correspondent. Taylor Davis, this is awesome. Second time we're here to talk baseball at the at the end of the winter meetings. The winter meetings are concluding right now. But Taylor, really appreciate you taking the time. We're going to get to what you're going to be doing for Just Baseball at the end. But first and foremost, like, overarching umbrella statement about free agency. You have anything drastic to say about the kind of money that's flying around right now?
I think it's just indicative of how talented baseball is right now a little bit. I really do think that baseball is as talented as we've seen in a while. And you've seen back-to-back free agent classes that are just unbelievable. And I think that if we didn't have the lockout last year, I think that this might not be as surprising. I think that all this happening December, what is this, December 5th, December 6th, is
7th.
so crazy to everybody. Because last year we didn't have this. Last year we had nothing. So, but obviously some really cool signings. The Aaron Judge signing is huge. It's big for baseball. I think it's great for baseball that he's staying in New York. I really do. I think that, and then obviously for players, it's a great deal. The relief pitching market is just absolutely insane, and it's awesome.
That's what we were kind of talking about that a little bit over the last couple episodes. And I even mentioned it with Xavier Scruggs. It's cool seeing those middle, like the middle class that they were saying is disappeared in some ways in Major League Baseball. It seems like it's coming back. We saw Aledmys Diaz get a 2-year deal worth like $14, $15 million, which floored all of us. But again, you look at the market, like it kind of makes sense. But I would agree. Jack, would you echo that like the 4 to 5 year reliever deals have to be the biggest surprise for me? Like, I think that's got to be the biggest shocker so far with this market.
I think so. I also think, longevity, and we talked about it, us too. We also talked about it with Xavier Scruggs about, Trey Turner getting paid through his age 40 season. And that's something that, I know a lot of players crave, right? So you've got these deals, you're securing generational wealth. When you talk to other guys, Taylor, and I mean, we're getting the active baseball player perspective here. How important is longevity in a contract? How important is creating that opportunity to get paid as opposed to the Cody Bellinger deal? And we can actually talk about that Bellinger deal because I find it fascinating. But what's the argument to be made against the Bellinger deal where, go get your years, go get your cash, and deal with it at the end of the contract?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of, when it comes to somebody, Trey Turner, somebody young, somebody like, Aaron Judge, who even at 30 is relatively young coming into free agency. At that point, there's no reason, I guess, necessarily to try to bet on yourself for another 20 million. Take the 300, take the really big deal. Now here's what I will say too, though, like some of those deals, like I kind of wonder, like, the 11-year deal that Trey Turner gets. Like, do you think that in reality, the Phillies really probably would have been okay doing that 9-year, $300 million deal, but the luxury tax hit on the $9-year, $300 million deal changes everything. Now you add 2 more years to that. Like, I always kind of wondered that, like, even like the all these monster, the Tatis and the and the Bryce Harper, like, yes, you're paying extremely talented players for a really long time, but there's, those 13, 14-year deals. How many have we seen ever? Yeah. It's kind of wild. And I kind of wonder if some of that is like, yeah, let's get these guys their money. But we also need to affect this as well. Like, I just hope that it plays out through the end. Like, the good thing is, for players, I think the right guys have gotten these deals. I think the guys that have gotten these deals are the guys that are going to have the ability to truly maximize those deals and make a name for guys to continue getting those deals. So I definitely think that, like, the show me deals, the Bellinger, the Rodons, probably what Conforto is going to sign. I'll tell you what those are. To me, at least, those are exciting. Those are exciting for baseball fans because, yeah, this guy's getting $17 million, but like 3 years ago, you thought this guy was going to get $350 million. Right. So, like, he wants this as bad as the team wants him to do this. Is kind of like my take on that.
I love that he's kind of highlighting how awesome it is to see these guys get money and the show me deals and all of those things. And There was one tweet that I saw on my feed today that kind of just rubbed me the wrong way. It was Josh Reddick saying that this quote right here. I'll read it to you. I guess I should have tried to hit 200 and strike out 150 times a year. Probably could have made 20 million a year at this point. And he spelled it Prolly. I hate when people do that with the word probably. That drives me nuts. Josh Reddick, I don't know anything about him. Could be a great guy. I know what he was as a baseball player. He was a pretty good one who, by the way, made $59 million in his career. And, only had, I think, one season of more than 3 F WAR. But the point is, isn't it exciting for you, like, to see like these guys, these younger guys get these big deals? Like, the way you're talking about it, you sound very excited about it, which is awesome timing because I saw that tweet today. It pissed me off. And it's awesome to see you so passionate about all the other players in baseball. And it seems like that's something that's a big core of why you love this sport so much.
No doubt. I mean, I think that like there are certain guys that I think deserve the opportunity to find out, like, to show me, like, let's find out. Like, for me, for Cody Bellinger, he needed a change of scenery. Like, at least that's what we're gonna give him, right? Like, he was the 2019 MVP. He struggled. Last year he was not great, but he was not awful. And I think that, like, he's still an extremely talented defender. I think he deserves that shot. Like, you deserve a chance to find out if you can get the MVP back.
Mhm.
I think the thing, it's the whole thing with how the game is changing that's frustrating everybody, right? Like, the people that it's the strikeouts different. It's guys are getting out by striking out instead of getting out a different way, and that's really bugging people. I grasp that. I understand that. But it is what it is. Like, that's where we're at, right? Like, that's kind of what's being valued right now. The home run, the background data is being valued right now. So we kind of have to own that, in my opinion.
I'm curious who these deals impact and how they impact. You know what I mean? So we've talked about it several times. I think not on air. The first time you came on, I don't think we talked about this, but we talked about the idea of establishing precedent and pushing new boundaries in terms of contract structure. And I think it all started in the shortstop market with Tatis, right? 340. So then you had Lindor say, well, I want 341. And here you are with the Padres saying, well, we'll give you 342, Trey.
Yeah.
How important is precedent?
I think to certain guys, it's more important than others. I think it depends on the player. I really do. I'll tell you, though, reading that the Padres offered him 340 and Judge 400 and lost both of them after offering 40 million both. 40 million more to both is kind of mind-boggling.
What does it tell you about the Padres? Anything?
Or
honestly,
state taxes? How much is that?
So they said, they claimed the Trey Turner one. I believe the reason that they made the offer at 342 was to match post-tax offers elsewhere. I don't think it tells you as much about the Padres as it does about the two players that took the deals. That's what I'll say. Because there have been guys that have taken $300 million deals in the past 3 years with San Diego. So, and San Diego is a place that wants to win. And, like, one thing that I truly believe in is that these guys that take these deals, for the most part, 98% of guys that take big deals, if you're going to be somewhere for an extended amount of time, you want to win. That's just the sheer, you've played to earn that right. Like, somebody's going to pay you this kind of money. Like, I want to win at the end of this contract. And San Diego's showing you they want to do that. And San Diego's showing you they want to do it for 10 years. Just like Philly is, right? Like, these aren't guys offering multiple 3-year deals. These are teams offering multiple 10-year deals. It's cool. I do think that, like, we are seeing a little bit of a shift again. Like, it does seem like a lot of these teams are, I mean, how many teams? We could probably put a handful of teams that are just blanket rebuild. Outside of that, like, I would hope that in 2023 and 2024, most of the teams are starting to compete again, like trying to compete. Like, I really do think, and I think that could possibly be why the reliever market is so hot, is because, you have so many teams that are like, hey, like, let me get this guy right now. It's a small piece. He's not expensive, and we can build on that for the rest of the rest of the bullpen or whatever it may be. But yeah, I couldn't believe that they lost out to both of those guys. Now, my next question being, and like I will say, talking about the Padres, this could have been a question. And this could have, if I was Aaron Judge, a question that I'm probably asking is, if you sign me for $400 million, are you going to re-sign Juan Soto?
Yeah. That's the layer to this.
And almost assuredly, they're not, right? There's no way that the Padres are paying $1 billion to 4 guys. So if they say no and you're Aaron Judge or you're Trey Turner, do you look at that and say, okay, who are the teams that are going to be able to afford Juan Soto? Most likely it's San Francisco. Like that's going to be at least the one of the top 3 names that you hear to get Juan Soto. So like now when you do that, I'm going to be getting $400 million, but Juan Soto is going to be in the division, meaning somebody in that division is also going to be trying to win at the same point. Like, I don't know. I just think that adds to it. Like, I think that, that could have added to it for him. Like for Aaron Judge, now that he's still in New York, he's not playing Juan Soto in the same division for 10 years.
Right.
Not now he's going to have to play Adley Rutschman in the same division for 10 years, but pick your poison.
So would you say, just from somebody that's kind of involved I know you follow really closely as just a fan of the game, but also you're very plugged in at a very high level, and your experience at the big league level and just consistently playing in AAA as well. And, seeing people go through by and communicating with all the people that you do. Which organizations do you feel like maybe don't get enough credit for doing it right? You talk about the Padres. I think the Padres, we love to be hard on them. And I do think that they're aggressive. They do a lot of things in an interesting way, but you got to like the way they're approaching it. We always talk about the Astros. We always talk about the Rays. We always talk about the Dodgers, of those teams that really have it figured out organizationally, developmentally, from top to bottom in a lot of ways. In your mind, because you kind of got your finger on the pulse everywhere, what's an organization that maybe doesn't get enough attention and love for the way that they have things going and operating inside of like behind the scenes?
I think that I'm going to say this team, and I think in the past probably 2 or 3 years they've gotten more credit. But I think if you look just over the last 40 years, I think what the St. Louis Cardinals have done with drafting and developing is really impressive. It started with arms, and it's now led to this incredible group of young bats that are ready, and they're promoting them when they're ready. I think what Anthopoulos is doing in Atlanta is he is building an absolute monster in Atlanta. But the one team that I gave credit to for a long time was actually Oakland. I actually think for a long time, like, Oakland competed for a really long time without spending money. And I don't love that, because I do want you to spend money as a player, right? Like, I'm a player first always.
You're trying to get paid?
Yeah. And I want everybody else to get paid, right? Like, but I do think that just compete, like, find a way to compete day in and day out, whether that is by spending money, or whether that is by spending money in the developing and the drafting and the Dominican academies and all of that, right? Like, all of that comes into play. Obviously I think Tampa, LA, the big ones, but I've said Oakland in the past. I think that they don't get enough credit for what they did in the 2000s. I just, they're, like I said, I'm just a big fan of teams competing, like what Cleveland's doing right now.
Yeah.
Right. Like, Cleveland is doing, and now Cleveland's spending money doing it. Now, like, the next wrinkle in this is, I think that teams can do just about whatever they want to win. I still feel like you have to have a $200 million player if you want to win the World Series.
Yes.
I just don't. I hate to say
this. Doesn't matter where that player
reason.
Plays. Doesn't matter where that player plays.
No. And I go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I guess the Guardians could technically be an exception to that, because Jose Ramirez should be a $200 million player.
His valuation is over 200, right?
I mean, in theory, you take his extension and what he had before, he's a $200 million player. His 2 extensions give him $200 million. So without question, I totally agree with you. And that's kind of where, like, if you've got, I believe Adley Rutschman will probably be a $200 million player. Like, that's a $200 million player. Now, I do think that, like, certain teams need that to be a veteran presence. Others don't. Some can do the younger guys. I think that fits matter. I think that so, like, for instance, let me give you this. This is a hot take on the Phillies and Trey Turner, but I actually thought they could have gone Dansby and saved money. That is not saying that I don't think Trey Turner is a better player. I do, without question. What I think is that part of Trey's value in this market, in the whatever you want in this market, is he's a true leadoff hitter. And I actually kind of like Schwarber leading off. I think Schwarber's done it long enough. I think he's a good enough leadoff hitter. I almost wonder if I'm the Phillies, am I better off getting Dansby for probably half and then taking $150 million and going somewhere else? For the exact same reason, I think that if I'm Baltimore and I'm getting a shortstop, I'm getting Xander Bogaerts. I'm getting the guy that's a proven winner, and I'm putting him at shortstop around a group of young guys. Because, yes, I need this guy to succeed. I'm going to pay him a ton of money. But the reality is, I want that guy to run my clubhouse. Yeah. I want that guy to show these guys what it's like to win the World Series, and he can do that.
That's why I love Dansby to the Cardinals, because the Cardinals don't need that as much, right? Like, they don't need a proven, winner as much, because they've got a lot of vets around there. I think they just need a guy that's another puzzle piece that fits into what they already have, and Dansby seems to be just that. One other note I wanted to just highlight with Taylor's point here is, we love to shit on the A's, and like very fair, because what they've done as of late recently, yes. But the way that it's just been with the A's over the last year and a half makes it feel like they've been at the basement for like so long. But what's crazy is they won 86 games in 2021, and they won 97 games back-to-back years in 19 and 18. And of course, finished 12 games over 500 in 2020. Like, the last bad season they had was in 2017 when they won 75 games. So it is wild. Like, these teams that slip a little bit, we almost just cast them away in our minds. And, there's a lot of people with jobs still in Oakland as part of that front office that have been a big part of that success for the previous 5 years plus, and are trying to get back there again. They already showed they could. Why should we doubt that they could get back there again? And I'm trying to remind myself that, because I am very quick to be like, oh, Oakland's gonna mess up this trade, because in recent moves it seems like they have.
But I'll tell you what, like, in the past, they've made, I don't want to call them like good trades, but when you look at Oakland's trades, when they happen, for the most part, the onlookers, the outside looks in and goes, man, like, that's a good trade for both sides. Like, both sides are getting what they need. It's a good trade for baseball. And I think that they've been consistent with that. And, like, look, don't get me wrong. One thing that I do, I don't necessarily think like tanking is the answer, but like buying into whatever approach you're going to buy into, like, that's important. Like anything else in life, you got to go all in. So, like, I do think that's important. The Pirates getting the number one pick, that secures that what they've done the past 3 years. Now they're going to have 2 number one picks. They're going to have, a couple, like, that's where they're at. So, like, in my opinion, if I'm the Pirates now, you got to start winning now. You've done your 4 years. Like, it's time. Like, that's what you've tried to follow with what Houston and Chicago did. And, like, I think that those are tough things to follow. Like, my opinion is that Theo is one of the greatest executives in sports history. Yeah. And like, even going and looking at those drafts, I remember asking somebody one time, like, or hearing, like, why like the Cubs are taking all these bats and everybody is bashing the Cubs on their arms, right? Like, everybody is saying that the Cubs cannot produce arms. That was always the big thing with them, which, by the way, 2012? I think it was 2012. Their first 3 picks were all major league arms that got to the big leagues. So, or 3 of the first 4, because Almora was 1. They then took Paul Blackburn, Pierce Johnson, and Dwayne Underwood, who were all 3 major league arms. Good major league arms. Yeah. So, like, but somebody had told me the drafts were low on bats, and watch, because he's going to take all the bats. Nobody's going to have any available. They're going to be able to get arms with them. And sure enough, what did they go do? They did exactly that. Now, the Quintana trade didn't really work out, but you had the pieces to do it. The Aroldis Chapman trade, what I'll tell you about the Aroldis Chapman trade in my mind is like, I don't care if you would have given up the entire system. The Cubs won the World Series. That is what it's about. It worked. That trade worked. Yes. Like, that's just my opinion. I know that people hated on them for getting rid of Glaber. It's gotten a little easier, obviously, since he didn't go back-to-back 30-plus years. But I do think that, like, I think that that's one place where what Theo did with those drafts and what the Astros did with those drafts and taking those players, like, so rarely do you see it. Because I believe when Correa was taken 1-1, he signed under slot, and I don't even think he was the favorite player. I don't think he was projected 1-1. And you hit on that. You hit 1-1 with a guy that you unpaid under slot to, which is not common. That's rare. It's rare that happens. Most guys go for best player available, pay them whatever they want. And don't get me wrong, 1-1 is usually a pretty good player. But I don't know. It's interesting to see. But, you know, the other thing is, like, when was the last time Oakland picked one? That's the thing that, like,
they're always winning.
They're always winning. They're always in the middle of the draft. So, like, these teams that are doing this, they're doing it in the middle of the draft. And you always talk about these guys being scared about draft picks, which I know teams are. But, like, now Tampa's drafting in the middle of the draft every year. They're not drafting one. They're not trading away one. They're drafting in the middle. Like, all these teams, I think that makes it more impressive. And I think that's maybe, in my mind, like, what helps Oakland. That makes that more impressive to me.
So I want to circle back to your point of always having a $200 million guy on the roster. Mm-hmm. But really, I want to transition it to supplementing the guys that you develop. Because you mentioned that 2016 Cubs team. Okay, you've got a Rookie of the Year and MVP and Chris Bryant on that team. Yes, you've got Anthony Rizzo, who you traded for as a guy that just had a cup of coffee in Major League Baseball at that time. And you made a lot of other small deals. Theo did, right? Working as Theo Magic to get Arrieta and Strove. Great. And you get Aroldis Chapman via trade. People want to ignore that John Lester made $25 million that year, that Jason Hayward made $22 million that year, that a 37-year-old John Lackey made $16 million that year. So you always supplement. That's what we see St. Louis doing right now, right? Where we talk about, just wait till Walker and Wynn and Tank Hence and even a guy like Graceffo get up. They're loaded with top 100 guys. They've always been a factory of producing top 100 guys. And we always talk about the homegrown talents. And even now you can talk about the homegrown talents, right? You can talk about O'Neill and Carlson and Newt Barr in the outfield. You can talk about Tommy Edman. They dropped bags for Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. They made it work. Who are the best supplementing teams in baseball?
That's a great question. I mean, I think you named one right there. I think, another one, I'm going to sound like a freaking fanboy, but what's happening in Atlanta right now is just so crazy to me.
It's fair.
It is. It's just, it blows my mind. And now here's like the from left field, but like the one I have always felt like, obviously what the Dodgers and the Astros have done, especially the Dodgers, like with the developing, the draft, the whole thing, right? Like even listening to players say that the Dodgers treat you as good as any other team. I think Tampa may be the best overall organization at doing it. And now they're considering paying top end guys. If they do that, you're talking about a potential monster. Like if they go and start signing guys like Freddie Freeman, if they can do that and supplement their Wander Francos, you're talking about the potential to be a contender, which they already are a contender every year. But to be, I feel like everybody forgets about Tampa every year. It doesn't matter.
Every year.
Every year you look at the AL because they're in the AL East. You look at the AL East, you go, okay, I got New York, I got Boston, and now I got Toronto, who's spending also. Like, because Tampa's not spending, let's forget about them. No, like I wouldn't do that. And like even a couple years ago, you got Charlie Morton. Like I just think that there's some interesting. I think that's the team. I don't know if they're doing it yet, but I think that's the team for me that I'm looking to supplement them and Baltimore. I think Baltimore has enough Baltimore's in a similar spot to Chicago because they have a ton of major league ready bats. They have a ton of bats in the minor leagues that are still high end, high upper echelon guys. They have some starters in the big leagues that are talented, right? Like Dean Kramer put together a good year. They've got some guys like that. Keegan Aiken has thrown okay, I think. Bruce Zimmerman's thrown fine. You got those guys. But the reality is you need arms. You need some veteran arms there. Like a Rodon fit in Baltimore is not terrible to me. Like if I'm them, I don't think I would have gone for Verlander. I think the Verlander fit in New York is perfect. Because I think they just wanted to match that with Scherzer, like the contract wise, right? Like they didn't want to give DeGrom 5 years because in 2 years you're going to lose Scherzer. So what are you going to do? Not that they're not going to spend money. I think Steve Cohen's going to go get somebody else. But hey, let's get these Scherzer and Verlander deals off the books and then decide what we want to do.
Yeah. I was thinking about with the Rays, which is a really interesting side of it, is if they gave them the damn stadium. We're seeing what the Texas Rangers are doing right now, and how the stadium has been able to, allow them to spend way more. And I know the Rangers historically have spent more, but still to see what they've done over the last 2 off seasons, putting them over, $700 million in payroll that we're seeing them shell out here. Like if the Rays were able to get that stadium and they were able to spend some money, even just to get to half of what the Rangers are doing right now, talk about supplementing that organization they'd be right there with the, I wouldn't say quite the Dodgers. I think they'd be right there with the Astros in terms of how much they spend and what they're able to build and cultivate themselves. Like that's one of the best organizations in baseball. And it really shows how like you can do it without all the money, but the money really is what puts you over the top. Is it possible for one of these teams that, like let's say the Rays never get that stadium? Like I guess Wander's technically their $200 million player, but it seems like let's operate under the assumption that it's status quo. They don't spend that much. They kind of continue to maneuver this way and pick their spots here and there. Can the Rays ever go over the top? Or if the Orioles take a Rays-like approach, I think they're going to spend more. But in this scenario, like, can a team really get there this way? I only see the Royals, and that's one of the really most recent examples you can think of a team that, overachieved at a lower budget.
And even the Royals now, looking back, had Eric Hosmer, who's a $200 million player. So, like, I think that
and Lorenzo Cain at that point was,
right. And you have Salvador Perez, who's now at 40. Like, but given, I'm totally with you. I think like the two teams that you point to that like weren't big spenders that won, at least in my mind, like was the these recent Giants that won and the Royals. They were both like, but the Giants had Buster Posey. So like, you can't say that. What I'll tell you is, I think you can compete. I think you can get to the World Series. You may win one, my opinion. And as is the opinion of baseball currently, is that the playoffs are just too volatile, right? We can't determine what's going to happen. Get me to the playoffs and we'll figure it out from there. But like, we can't determine who can win the World Series analytically. Yeah. We can determine because the series are too short. So like, I think that those teams will have no trouble through 162 games getting there. Get me to the playoffs. The question just becomes, can you win the World Series? Now, as an organization, how important is that to you? Right. I think that's what changes. And I think that's the mindset that shifts depending on your ownership, depending on your front office. I can tell you this right now. Chris Young in Texas wants to be the last person on the field on the last game of the year. Yeah. Because it's important to him because he did it. He played, right? Like, I think that's one thing that's interesting to me is like, I'm not saying that winning the World Series doesn't matter to every GM, because I'm sure it does. Every GM knows if you win the World Series, you're probably going to have a job for a really long time.
Unless you're James Click.
Yeah. Unless you're James Click. But I do think that, like, the reality is you can also keep your job for a really long time getting to the playoffs. Because if you get to the playoffs, you're going to make your owner money. And the reality is we are a business. I work a job. It is a fun job. I love my job, but it's a job. And in the business, getting to the playoffs is going to keep that job every single year for the front office members. I just think it's almost like a tick. I don't want to say more important. I just think that like the guys that have played, like there being less baseball players in the front office and there being more minds. I don't think it's a bad thing by any means, because like I've said for years, like that would 100% be discriminating against those people being in the front office. I want the best minds possible making these teams. And I for sure think that some of those minds never played the game. And that is perfectly fine with me. What I do think is that there's a hint, just a hint maybe, of extra edge to win game 7 if you played.
Yeah.
It's not as cool to just get to the CS, to just get to the DS, to get to the World Series as it is to walk away with that trophy.
100%. Two quick things to wrap up. Number one, Jared Oliva, now an LA Angel. We were talking during the Rule 5. So Sable went 4th to Cincinnati, but I know a guy that you know really well. Jared Oliva is an LA Angel. So
in the major league side,
he was taken on the Major League Rule 5 draft. Yeah,
that is awesome. I didn't know. Well, awesome. They're doing the minor league side today. Also,
minor league side, taking the minor league side.
He was taken on the minor league side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God.
I was going to be shocked. Also, I don't know that. I don't really know this because it happened to G-Man Choi, I believe, but I don't know that you can go in the major league side if you've had major league time.
Oh, that makes sense.
I believe, like, this is where I don't. The Rule 5 draft is
weird,
one of the things I don't know about it, but I think G-Man Choi went in the Rule 5 one year. But it was after he had but it was before he got to the big leagues, I believe. Yeah. So
okay.
anyway.
Gotcha. Yeah, because you would have a guy Rule 5 twice. That's never happened.
Yeah, it's odd, and like, and it's the same reason that like you can't be Rule 5 if you don't have a contract. So here's something like, well, we'll talk about this later.
Gotcha. Love it. Hey, last thing, we're gonna start something new with you. It's gonna be awesome, and I have a hypothetical for you. If somebody throws a no-hitter and nobody's there to see it, did he throw a no-hitter?
I hope so.
Okay. So Taylor is going to be hosting a pod on the Just Baseball Network, Show and Go. We adjusted the name. It was originally going to be Daddy Ball. Daddy Ball. Listen, we'll walk people through this right now. Daddy Ball is what your kid calls baseball.
My son has never called baseball, and it's really funny because he loves the Cars movie, and one of the characters in Cars, he calls baseball. So it's hilarious because he calls that guy baseball, and then he calls Daddy Ball or baseball Daddy Ball. So we were going to go with that, but then the connotation and
yeah. See, I loved the story. I was like, that's perfect. And then we start getting into the pod art of it, and I'm like, there's no way that we can put Daddy Ball in this fancy font and it's going to look anything like maybe what people are going to come away with from that. And we're like,
maybe some Balenciaga ads.
Oh. Man, I might have to cut this. We'll see. No, but yeah, probably.
That was good. No, it's good to go. We can keep that rolling. That's approved. That's approved. That's staying in. But there you go. Like, very excited about this. I know we've been talking about it for a while. And I mean, this is like we're going to have you on the Just Baseball show plenty more through the off season, especially once we get that podcast in full motion and everything. But I mean, as people can tell from just listening to this, and this is part of why we were so excited to have you on the show more and have you involved with us, is your passion is I wouldn't say unmatched. I feel like you match all of our passions, and then and then you add it because you actually live it. So it's like we have somebody that's met our passion, and then somebody that's actually been able to do it and still is doing it at a professional level, which is a dream to be able to add to what we're doing here. So very excited about that.
And the beauty is it's a player-driven podcast, right? So it's hosted by a player. Every week we're going to have a player conversation. And I feel like that was, obviously we do player interviews on the Just Baseball show when they call up, but the player-to-player conversation is kind of what we felt like the Just Baseball Network was missing. And we're really happy to have that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really excited to add to it. Like I tell people all the time, it's so wild this is happening. Like, I just randomly started listening to your guys' podcast. I might have seen it on TikTok. I don't remember why, but and I just really felt like you guys had good takes. And I think that adding this section to that, like, I'm proud to be a part of this because of the way that you guys carry yourselves and the things that you guys talk about and the way that you guys talk about players. Because one of the things that, I want to add to this is, like, I want to be relatively unbiased, right? Like, we're going to give our opinions, but, like, without question, you guys for sure play devil's advocate to each other, and that's important. Like, I want the truth, I want that, and I think we're going to get that. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to hear kind of all of our conversations.
Man, Taylor Davis, we can say it now. Talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely.